What's up? It's me, Kevin. Just here to do my Antman review video, sorry. And where we talk about my first bit of thoughts about the film, my reactions, my ups and downs about what I thought about the film, and also where I think Ant-Man will be fitting in the MCU. Firstly, I think this is my first reactions to this movie was pretty great. Like, I was really happy where they took this character at the beginning. Like, I love this movie from the start to the beginning. How they show, someone who's Scott Lang, who's just normal. He's a normal guy. He's a kid. He's, he's not super in any single way other than he's able to break into houses pretty well. But yeah, that's probably one of the parts I loved most about it. That he wasn't super in a way like it was Tony Stark super, where he's able to create shit out of nothing, with anything. Where Scott Lang just has to do with what he's got, and that's kind of it. He doesn't have millions of dollars in his bank account or nothing, and he's a kid to deal with, and he's got his whole family issue to deal with. Sorry. So that's probably why, and you see, why I think he's such a grounded character. I'm sorry, my hair keeps, jumping in front of my face. Why I think he's such a grounded character, because he's just a normal guy. And then he ends up getting this kind of redemption streak by Hank Pym, who, seeks him out, instead of thinking, you could become the new Ant-Man. Hank Pym, at least from the beginning of this film, he basically confronts, like, this is the first scene of Ant-Man I'm describing, to let you know. Where Hank Pym basically confronts S.H.I.E.L.D. and saying, why did you try to recreate my technology? You could have came to me, I would have worked with you, but you chose to go behind my back and try to recreate this technology, which is my technology. S.H.I.E.L.D. gets pretty pissed, and it's like one of the agents who, really great to say, is that Haley Atwell is there, Howard Stark is there. It's not Dominic Cooper Howard Stark, it's different, it's a much older, older Howard Stark. And one of the other agents, who I do not know who they are, he basically, saying, we need this too, and, we're going to keep working on this with or without you. And basically that was kind of a bluff, because S.H.I.E.L.D. really didn't have anything on the technology that Pym was working on, the Pym particles, which Haley Atwell kind of outlined, saying, we do need him. And, and that's what happens. It ends up being 30-40 years later. Hank Pym hangs up the suit and never uses it. But he realizes that at this point in his life, I think it was halfway through between, him meeting Scott Lang and then S.H.I.E.L.D., that he ends up taking in an assistant. Maybe he had some kind of teaching job, I don't know. But he had an assistant called Darren Cross, who, works under him. He kind of knew some of what Hank Pym was working with, the shrinking technology, but he really didn't have the technology. He didn't have the thought or the, he had concepts, but he didn't have much else. And then he sought out Hank Pym and asked him, why aren't you going to tell me this? And it's like, because I see too much of myself in you. Basically Hank Pym, that's another scene I'm describing. Hank Pym describes, there's too much of me in you, and too much of me is just not good. So that's why, in a sense, that he did not give Darren Cross the kind of formula of how to create this kind of suit. Where Darren ends up, farther in this film, taking over Hank Pym's basically being the CEO of Hank Pym's technology company, of Pym, I think Pym Technology, whatever. And he does eventually change it to Cross Technologies, and then at this point, how do I put it? Hank Pym knows Darren Cross is close to replicating this technology, which has probably taken Cross some 10-15 years of constant research to create this suit, which would be called the Yellow Jacket. At this point in the film, where we see the introductions to Scott Lang, Hank Pym, Hope Van Dyne, goodness sakes, I cannot pronounce it. Holy shit. Evangeline Lilly's character of Hope Van Dyne, who ends up he was Hank Pym's daughter in this movie, which I personally was hinting. I'm thinking she was gonna be Wasp. I'm not gonna say anything else, but I'll talk about that later in this film. And Hank Pym knows Cross is close to creating this suit, and he knows he has to get someone other than himself or his daughter to go and destroy all the data basically on the suits before Cross is able to start selling his suits to the military. And spoiler alert to Hydra, who is also seeking out this technology. So Hank Pym ends up, he's basically been watching Scott Lang for quite some time. At this point in the movie, that he ends up going and confronting him, kind of after Scott Lang has basically stolen the suit. He finds out what it does. He freaks out. He goes back. He puts the suit back. He ends up getting arrested trying to put the suit back, basically. And being that in this film Scott Lang is portrayed as being a robber, and he gets some kind of idea or a tip that there's lots of money in this house, this giant safe in the basement, which is Hank Pym's home. So yeah, that's kind of where I was talking about how he breaks into the house. He brings his suit back because he freaks out that it shrinks and all that. Hank Pym does a Sorry guys, I'm sorry, there was such a gap there. I thought I could hear somebody for some reason. Hank Pym does eventually bring Scott Lang home to his house after he's arrested and say, you know, I want you to become the Ant-Man, but I will help you. I'll train you and all, but you need to commit. Like, he can control the ants, he can control stuff like that, and you know he did go through a lot of trial runs with the suit. You know, he ends up flipping out several times when he shrinks and tries to make friends with the ants, and he freaks out and gets big and he blows a hole in the ground because he expands inside the ground, which he's only a few inches under the ground, but he still blows up, and it was so fun. It happens like 3 times because he has his mini freakouts when the ants, he doesn't, his force basically isn't strong, and the ants kind of go after him. So he goes over, he takes these several cool trial runs with the suit where he eventually does get it, and then Hank Pym, Hope Van Dyne, and Scott Lang do eventually get a plan to take down Darren Cross before he's able to sell these suits to and causing massive chaos across the world. So firstly, like before he goes after Darren Cross, Hank Pym basically sends him on his first mission. Scott Lang on his first mission, but he has to retrieve this piece of tech that is some connection or to Darren Cross's plans, which currently at that point in time was the piece of technology was at a Stark storage facility, which at this point in time, present day, it's actually, that building is an Avengers building, which is what we see in Age of Ultron at the very end, where they have this new Avengers training area, and he basically sends Ant-Man to go and get this piece of tech before it's used for some diabolical bad things. And he ends up getting into a confrontation with Falcon, and Falcon, asks him who you are, Ant-Man. Oh, it's like, you're Ant-Man? Well, what's that? And he gets into a fight with Falcon. He ends up getting away, but it was so cool to see the Avengers building and seeing Falcon. And I've actually got a really cool connection thing I'm going to talk about with Falcon, but that's going to be at the very end of this video because it's such a great spoiler. He ends up getting the tech back, and this proves to Hank Pym that Scott Lang can do it. They end up going on this mission into Pym, basically into Pym Technologies at the time. And they have a plan to destroy the suit, and they basically, I'll totally skip over everything. I'll just say that they end up breaking into Pym Technologies, but they fall out short of getting the Yellow Jacket suit, because Darren Cross did very much anticipate Hank Pym and Scott Lang, and he ends up knowing what they were planning, and he ends up able to stop them and corners them, and brings in some Hydra agents basically to say, okay, here's a suit, Hydra, and the Hydra has the money, and then Darren is about to win. He's about to kill Hank Pym, but then basically Scott Lang uses one of his I think something in his belt that basically expands whatever it touches, and it blew up the kind of the sphere that the Yellow Jacket was contained in, being at this point the Yellow Jacket suit's very small. He blows it up, they get into a big huge fight, and then Darren Cross basically flees, and the whole building blows up, and Hydra dies with them. Pretty much. Darren Cross freaks out, he's not happy, and then he basically goes after Scott Lang's little daughter, And again, it's kind of in that scene of the trailer where we see Darren Cross and Scott Lang fighting on that Thomas the Train. It's so funny in the trailer, in the trailer basically. They fight in his daughter's bedroom, Scott Lang's daughter's bedroom, and they fight on this Thomas the Train thing, and it's a huge action sequence. I loved how they made Scott. That's just a whole visual look of them shrinking, getting big, shrinking, getting big, shrinking, getting big, and I really loved that about this film. There was always something unique with each Marvel film, even though it doesn't have to be a huge blockbuster. Just its uniqueness and it's uniquely a Marvel film, a Marvel brand character who's being portrayed in the way that the comics would have been very happy with, and the writers. So, but it's one of the best scenes in this film when they're fighting, Ant-Man and Darren Cross. Ant-Man basically throws one of these kind of it would be probably something the size of a I don't know what this weapon does. Shoot, whatever. He can throw it, and if it touches something, it enlarges whatever it touches. And he basically throws it at Darren Cross, but Darren Cross deflects it. It hits the Thomas the Train, and it makes the Thomas Train go out through the kid's bedroom window on the second floor and fall into the front lawn. And the cops are wondering what the hell's happening. He throws another one, hits an ant. The ant gets supersized me. It walks out. Everybody's freaking out, and the cop says, "Well, that's one ugly dog." It was so funny. It was just the comedy was great. I still personally would have liked to see a totally Edgar Wright version. Like, he's still given a producer credit on this film and a screenplay, but I still believe I would have liked to see an Edgar Wright version, because I always see movies like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World or whatever it was, and seeing a version of Ant-Man in that kind of world. But I'm still very much happy with this film. Darren Cross does eventually die in this film. His body gets shrinked and destroyed, because basically the issue the Yellow Jacket suit had was that it could not properly shrink organic matter without just pretty much just destroying it. Basically, I'll say that. And Ant-Man is able to rip across, or destroy the suit in such a way of Yellow Jacket suit that he ends up getting, his body gets started to clump up, and then he just blows up, and not blood or nothing, he just gets sucked into some kind of black hole-ish thing. It's weird to say that, and that's pretty much the way this film went. Scott Lang becomes a good guy, and it kind of ties that off. Darren Cross, the PIM technologies is just basically destroyed, and that kind of ties off the whole origin of Ant-Man, because basically by the end of this film, I'm not gonna try to explain it. It's a scene that you really have to experience yourself. But basically, Ant-Man is accepted into the Avengers in a sense that Scott. You're gonna have to see the scene. It doesn't involve Cap. Doesn't involve anybody. It's just Falcon and Ant-Man, and you're gonna have to watch it yourself. So. And the only other things I want to talk about is the end credit scene of Ant-Man, which does involve a Wasp. Hope Van Dyne ends up becoming Wasp at the end of this film, which is really great. I'm really happy to see that, and it's really great. The other end credit scene I saw was Cap and Falcon basically cornering the Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier gets trapped, and they try to figure out how to deal with it without bringing Tony Stark into that situation. And that particular scene was originally from Civil War, which Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel, did authenticate, saying that scene at the end of Ant-Man is a scene from Civil War. And Falcon says, we can't bring Tony in, but I have a friend. So he's kind of referring to Ant-Man. So it's really great that Ant-Man is already starting to get referenced like this. Also, Spider-Man is referenced. I think several other characters are referenced over the cross of Ant-Man, which is, they're all in great ways. They don't over descend or whatever, put bad things over Ant-Man in the whole movie. It's just references. So I think that's gonna be my review for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review. I'll have my other videos up. My talking about certain movies, upcoming movies, stuff like that in the future, and I hope you much enjoyed this video. Thank you.